fallout, smoke, women crying for their sons because their sons are not, Romans killing riotous groups that are rising up. Free Judea, free our people, autonomy for Israel. You had Herod, an Edomite, and his dynasty. Herod's ruling, killing any potential threat, any potential Messiah. Then you had the Pharisees and the Sadducees that we learn from Josephus are not Jews by birth. No.
Right? Now look at these. Yeah, I'm telling you, I gotta show y'all. A picture speaks 1,000 words. Just look for yourself. And this is the creme de la creme. All praises be to the Most High, y'all. Everything we've been through, y'all, the Most High is going to retribute it on all the nations that have had a hand in the oppression of his apple, the apple of his eye, his chosen people, his beloved, his fervent lover, his only begotten. They're going to have their part in the lake of fire. You see them tormented by some kind of creature. I don't even know what that even is, y'all. Judgment in chains. He that led into captivity shall go into captivity. All praise to the Most High, y'all. What group of people have gone through the full extent of this terror, servitude, yoke of iron, a nation with an ego image, immigrants coming in after them rising up and getting reparation offers, their kids being sold into captivity, you having kids but not enjoying them because they splitting up families, you betrothing a wife but another man laying with her. Y'all gotta look at the power of a prophecy prophesied thousands of years ago. Moses was a bad man, but even more bad than Moses was the Most High Yah, the dreadful and terrible Almighty Creator, who prophesied every lick of this on our black behinds, and it came to pass without fail. Now let's look at verse 68. It said, thou that dwells in the clefts of the rock. Whoa, I know a lot of y'all know about the Caucasus Mountains. Let's just let the word speak. Let's go to verse 4. Though you exalt yourself as the eagle, and though you set thy nest among the stars. What's up, Zion Dynasty? This is your favorite dreaded Israelite, the man, the myth, and the legend, Mr. YAH'S. Y'all show me some love, and welcome back to Zion Dynasty, where your boy hitting y'all with another banger. All praises be to the Most High Yah, the mighty one of Yaakov, the holy one of Yasharal. First, I want to say peace, love, blessings, black power, and prosperity to the overflow, to the full, to the overflow, to all my Israelite brothers and sisters. I also want to extend a warm peace, love, blessings, prosperity to the full, to the overflow, to all of the Gentile supporters, all my Gentile Zion Dynasty family. I could not thank y'all enough for not being lost in the sauce, not rocking with these urban apologist junkies, but supporting Zion, supporting this work, supporting this channel as we seek to awaken the Lion of Zion, the 12 tribes of Israel, the greatest nation that has ever lived, as we resurrect, as we watch prophecy, right? Resurrect the dry bones of Israel. All praises be to the Most High Yah. I could not do this without y'all. I love y'all so much. And what are you doing? If you're viewing and you haven't subscribed, go ahead and like this video up, comment, share, subscribe, do everything you got to do. And I couldn't thank y'all enough. Y'all have been rocking with this. Y'all have been prophesying, fighting for me. And let me tell y'all something. When you do what the Most High tells you to do, the Most High will bless it every step of the way. Y'all better hear what I'm saying, Yoruba. But now Ephraim of the tribe of Joseph, I have watched as y'all have fought on my behalf. Y'all get in them comments and you see them trolls and y'all swing. All them trolling Negroes and those secret Edomites. Y'all, it's a lot of white folks that get on their Shabbat Shalom. And then the longer you talk to them, you be like, wait a second, you Esau. And then they vanish. But I just want to thank y'all for just supporting us, supporting me and Shawnee D to get this content out, supporting our family. And if you want to support further, I know a lot of y'all probably already know and have already been doing this, but I'm going to link the Cash App. I'm going to show that on the screen. If you want to continue to allow us to be one step further, to throw our entire selves at this, because as you guys know, we work full time, but our heart is to be able to do this solely, get this information out. There's a lot of books that I have lined up Hebrews to Negroes. I want to do that review, and it's a bunch of other different stuff that I want to really go into with you guys. It's like a long list of books, but as you guys know, we're gonna go ahead and go into it. We have been dealing with our Esau Edom series, right? We've gone through the prophecies. We've shown that this people would exist as the last ruling empire before Yeshua returns, establishes his government, establishes his world, right? For his people, where he regathers the 12 tribes from the four corners of the earth, returns us to the land, and shatters that statue that Daniel saw as a vision of all the empires that were ruled until his return. We saw that Edom, Esau, is that last ruling empire. Let's put it on the screen in 2nd Esdras, chapter 6, verse 9. It says, "For Esau is the end of the world," right? "And Jacob is the beginning of it that follows." We broke that down, and we saw that the etymology of the word world, when you see it in the scriptures, this is talking about government. This is talking about rulership. That Edom, this European capitalistic critical race theory based society and system of ruling, will be the last government before Yeshua's family based, Israel based, honoring the land, honoring one another, operating in a communal love, right? Where if Big Mama had sugar and Aunt Sally had Kool-Aid, the whole village was drinking a glass of Kool-Aid, right? We talked about the contrary worldviews that we saw Shem prophesy to Rebecca. Y'all gotta check them videos out now. We've been going through it. Where Shem tells Rebecca that the reason that you have this upset stomach, you got this war in your bowels, is because you have twins in your wombs and two ideologies, right? One would give birth to Solomon, who would build the temple and have a system of Torah and selflessness. The other one would give birth to Vespasian, the Edomite, that would destroy the temple, that would rule in selfishness and exploiting another people, and the haves and the have-nots. We went through all of that, y'all. So this one right here is going to be an action-packed, y'all. This is going to be an action-packed one. This is going to be an good old-fashioned Bible study. We are going to look at the infamous, the legendary 400-year prophecy. Most of Zion is familiar with that. A lot of my Israelites that have already been on this journey, you have heard about the 400-year prophecy. Now, this is where we come into contact with these urban apologists, these Christian police, these white supremacist undercover Roman Catholics that are trying to keep our people, keep the 12 tribes of Israel from awakening to who we are, reawakening to our identity, turning back to our Yah, turning back to our heritage of the laws, statutes, and commandments. There is a people, y'all, and we already know that's Esau. We already know that the United States of Babylon is the daughter of Babylon, who is an offshoot of Rome. We talked about Zepho becoming a godlike king in Chittim and becoming one with the Chittim people, setting up the Roman Empire. And America and a lot of these European countries today are offshoots of this process. And a lot of them, we talked about in Psalms 83, have conspired together to keep the name, the remembrance of Israel out of the minds of people, and most certainly out of the minds of us, right? This is where you get into the Rothschilds and the media outlets and CNN Network and the History Channel and the folks that gave JB hell for posting a lot of these videos. They don't want this information out, and they do not want Israel to reclaim our birthright, but it's inevitable, y'all. And this is the channel where we dropping that history, we dropping that DNA, we dropping that Harvard, Tudor, Parfit, the Cambridge African Zion, the Oxford Black Jews of Africa, the DNA studies, the old bones of my true ancestry. This is where we bring that smoke. All praises be to the Most High, Yuru Baba Ephraim. So we're going to talk about this 400-year prophecy, because a lot of these police, these Edomites, and a lot of their goon squad, yeah, I said it, these goon squad sellout Negroes are with the business. They are trying to say that all these prophecies have been fulfilled.
They're saying, well, you can't use Deuteronomy 28.
Even though it says we're going to go into a country as swift as the eagle flies.
Oh no, you can't use that.
Even though it says we're going to have a yoke of iron around our neck, you can't use that. That's been fulfilled. Even though it says you're going to go into slavery again on slave cargo ships, oh, that's already been fulfilled. And I'm like, Negro, when did Israel go on slave cargo ships back to Egypt? They walked into Egypt. Christ walked into Egypt. Abraham walked into Egypt. Joseph walked into Egypt. Bring the smoke, right? And you gotta understand, family, these Negroes that are siding with this agenda is all a part of prophecy. The Most High already knew they was gonna try this. So we're gonna look at the 400-year prophecy, and I'm gonna break that thing down like swing, 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 no contest, and show you through Josephus, and I got the book. This ain't me just some people quote. I'm gonna turn to it and show y'all in Josephus where he breaks down how long Israel was in Egypt, right? And how the 400 years is not to be applied to when our forefathers were in Egypt, because as we're finished show, and as I'm gonna prove, I'm gonna state that hypothesis, our forefathers did not suffer hard bondage in Egypt for 400 years, right? Our forefathers were in Egypt a totality of 400 years, our sojourn there, but as we're gonna see, Joseph lived peaceably. They loved Joseph. They loved that entire generation. Pharaoh gave them the best of the land of Goshen. So when you break down these different segments of how long they were in Egypt, they did not suffer bondage. And what I'm gonna show you guys is that there's only one people, one descendant people, that fulfilled the totality of the hard bondage in a spiritual Egypt for 400 years, the anniversary being in August 2019. Let's deal with it. So first, family, let's go to Genesis chapter 15, and this is our foundation, the holy word of the Most High Yah, where we're going to look at this infamous, legendary 400-year prophecy. Let's go into it. So in Genesis chapter 15, beginning at verse 12, the word of Yah reads, "And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, saith the Most High Yah, and afterward shall they come out of this nation with great substance, with great reparations, with the wealth of the wicked, with the wealth of the nations. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age, but in the fourth generation they shall come hither again. They will return to their land, for the iniquity right now of the Amorites is not yet full." There is a lot to unpackage in this passage, y'all. First, I want to piggyback when we talked about Esau. So we talked about in the book of Jasher in chapter 57 that Joseph had the court records. He had his history. He knew who he was. He knew the price that his father had paid for them to be in the land of Canaan and to bury Jacob there. For Jacob made Joseph swear that while they were in Egypt, when he died, that they would not bury Jacob in the land of Egypt, but in Canaan. So we looked at when Joseph and the patriarchs went to bury Jacob, that Esau withstood them. And Esau said,
What y'all think y'all doing?
and Joseph looking like, man, what's up with this cat? He can't be serious right now. He said, we're here to bury our father Jacob in the land that he purchased from you. And Esau looked at him and said,
That ain't never happened. You weren't there when that happened.
So right here we see this ancient serpent that knew that Joseph was the next generation and was not physically present when Jacob and Esau made the agreement that Jacob would have the entire land of Canaan and that Esau would have everything else. So we see Esau try to manipulate the mind of Joseph to second guess who he really is. This is Psalms 83. This is the spirit of Psalms 83, where the nations have tried to say,
Yo, y'all Israel now. Oh, y'all black folks, oh, y'all Jews. We was kings. Oh, y'all think y'all is Jews now? You Jewish?
They're trying to psych us out and have us second guess the prophecies, second guess the Harvard literature, second guess the archaeology, second guess the DNA, second guess all these things that are right in front of our eyes. The nations are trying to manipulate, and this is what Esau was doing to Joseph, and Joseph said, I ain't having it. He said, yo, Naphtali, run back to Egypt. We got that paperwork. We got this smoke. So Naphtali, with the feet of the hinds feet, runs from Canaan back to Egypt to get the court records. But during that time, a war break out. Naphtali come back and be like, yo, they tunning on sight. So they start fighting, y'all, and we know the story. The reason I bring that up is because we see a spirit. We see a spirit, an ancient serpent spirit that seeks to guard the land of Eden, guard that promised land, to keep the sons of Adam, the true sons of Adam, the birthright sons of Adam, even the children of Israel, from reclaiming the land. We looked at the spiritual component of how Lucifer, Satan the spirit, understand, is that angel that was used by the Most High to guard the land of Eden when Adam and Eve were kicked out. Now this is some deep stuff, y'all. So Satan was that anointed cherub that sat at the entrance of the garden to keep Adam and Eve from returning. Now we see that Satan has a chosen lineage that he's using, and it started with Esau, who also told Joseph, who was the prince tribe, to lead his people back to the land. We see Esau say, you ain't coming back. Not just that, but we looked at the next layer of Torah interpretation, where we looked at the fact that Satan actually has the descendants of Esau become the synagogue of Satan, and they coiled their hair, they had a black hats on. They almost did the same thing we did to get the birthright, where we dressed up like Esau, now they dress like us. And they guard that land, and they say World War III gonna pop off if these Negroes, these Israelites, try to come back. So I bring that up because we have this spiritual iniquity that's going on, and we see in Genesis 15 that the Most High tells Abraham that the iniquity of these nations is not full yet. The reason I bring that up, family, is because a lot of y'all are saying, well, why we ain't going back to the land? We know we Israel. There is a lot of different spiritual things that have to happen before we go back to the land. Now, right now, the Most High is allowing the nations and all of their wickedness to reach a boiling point by which the Most High will recompense it all on the head of the nations that have conspired against his people. So during the meantime, Israel is waking up. We finding out who we are. Y'all rocking with the channel. Y'all sharing it. You liking it. You commenting. You reading Torah. You're doing your DNA. You're doing your old bones. So it's a process of us waking up and the iniquity of the nations reaching a peak. Now let's go back to Genesis 15. So in verse 13 it says, and the Most High Yah said to Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. The first thing these urban apologist junkies are going to say is that this was prophesying that Israel would go into Egypt and serve 400 years, and then they would come out and go to the promised land. This is not referring to that captivity. Well, JP, they did go into Egypt. They was in Egypt for 400 years. They did not become afflicted and oppressed by Egypt for 400 years. They did not. I know this is a lot, y'all, and there is a lot of sources that I have to go through. And the first one I'm gonna go to is in the book of Exodus. Let's look at Exodus real quick, shall we? So in the book of Exodus, chapter 12, let's begin at verse 40. We're gonna let the word speak. Now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. So now we're gonna put all these precepts together, y'all, and I'm gonna prove to you this was not talking about the Egyptian captivity or bondage, right? Now we see in Exodus that it says that they would be in the land or sojourn in the land of Egypt for 400 years. And a lot of y'all see where I'm going. They were in Egypt for a totality of 400 years. They were not afflicted by Egypt until after Joseph died and that entire generation. That's piggyback. Let's look at that. Now in Exodus chapter 1, it lets us know about this event. Let's turn to it. In Exodus chapter 1, beginning at verse 7, and the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied, and they waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was full of all these Negro Israelites. Verse 8. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, a new Pharaoh that did not know Joseph. So now understand, after Joseph is long and gone and his memory is gone, a Pharaoh comes that doesn't know about how Joseph saved the entire world and saved Egypt by teaching them wisdom on how to manage all of the food during the time of the famine. So Joseph was honored because of his work to preserve Egypt, his people, and the entire world during that global famine. But what we see, a new Pharaoh comes up and says, I don't have no regard for who's all these Israelites that's everywhere. They might end up siding with our enemies or something. We got to do something about these people. Now, he doesn't know that these people need to be honored for what they have done. He just sees them as a threat to their empire. So now understand that Israel being in Egypt for 400 years, the entire time was not oppression. Joseph was treated as a king. His family was honored. They ate the best of the land. That's why they increased the way they did, right? So now where do we get this concept that they were there for 400 years? Let's go to Galatians. Paul, who was very learned in the Hebrew, very learned in the old copies of the scriptures. This is why I tell you guys, what type of Bible you use matters. A lot of these newer translations deviate from the true historical roots of the scripture. You have to go to the oldest possible version. That's why I tell y'all, a King James version is the way to go. Specifically a 1611 King James version. Because when you deal with a lot of these translations, they deviate from the original Hebrew scriptures. Now, a lot of our scriptures are based on the Hebrew Masoretic text. Now understand, the Hebrew Masoretic text is a newer copy or a newer translation of the older Hebrew. Now, older than the Hebrew Masoretic text, you run into the Greek Septuagint. Well, first you run into the Samaritan Pentateuch, and then you run into the Greek Septuagint. The Greek Septuagint is far older. It is a closer translation from the original Hebrew. Now, why do I bring all this up? Paul was learned. He lived close during the time of Yeshua, so he would have had access to the Hebrew. You got to understand. The Bible says that when Christ encountered Paul, that Christ spoke in Hebrew. The Hebrew that Paul was speaking was not this Yiddish, not this new stuff. It was an older Hebrew linked to the older Hebraic copy of Torah. Why do I bring Paul up? Paul knew more than what a lot of these translations are saying. Let's go to Galatians. So in the book of Galatians, this is where we're going to see Paul drop a massive nugget. In Galatians 3:16, it reads, Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He hath not, and to seeds as of many, but as one, and to thy seed, which is Christ. So Christ is the epitome of all the promises, everything the Most High intended. Christ was that faithful Israelite that epitomizes how Israel was meant to be an example to all nations. Now that's a whole nother topic, but let's go to verse 17. And this I say, that the covenant that was confirmed before of God in Christ, the law, which was 430 years after, cannot do away with or disannul, that it should make the promise of none effect. So now it's heavy, y'all. I know that's kind of wordy, but I'm gonna break it down. Paul is basically saying that from the period that the promise was made to Abraham to the giving of the law, that was 430 years. Now understand, the promise was made to Abraham way before they were afflicted by the Egyptians. So Paul's saying that from the time the promise was made to Abraham in the land of Canaan, that his seed would have this land forever, until Moses giving the law, which is way after the Exodus, that itself is 430 years. Now we finna get deep, y'all. Y'all buckle in, we finna get deep. Now we have record of how old one of the individuals that was a part of that original number of 60 when they first went into the land of Egypt. This is Kohath. Kohath is the grandfather of Moses. But not just that, Kohath was a part of the 60 people that first went into Egypt. So we have a timeline based on his age where we can see if this adds up to 400 years. Now, we know that the age of Kohath would have been 133 years old. His total lifespan, right? We also know that Amram, who is the son of Kohath, lived for 137 years, right? And then we have Moses, where we know he was 80 when he led the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. So if we know that Kohath came into Egypt with that generation, when they first came with Joseph, because Joseph had a good spot for him, we know that Kohath was 133 years old. Let's say he was a baby when he came there. So we got 133, and then we have his son Amram, who lived 137 years. Let's say that Kohath had him at 137. And then let's say that at the end of 137, on his deathbed, he had Moses. And then Moses lived 80 years and took them out of the land of Egypt. If you add 80, 137, and 133, and let me look at my notes real quick. If you add all three of these together, you get about 315 years, or 350 years. This shows that there's no way that Israel could have been in bondage in Egypt for 400 years if the total length of time that they were in Egypt under Joseph would have been around the 80 plus the 137 plus the 133, which is about 350 years, right?
But if you do the math, you'll find that this is not mathematically possible. You see, Moses was 80 years old when they left Egypt. His father Amram lived to 137. His father Kohath lived to 133. And Kohath was one of the 66 persons who went with Jacob down into Egypt. Now let's just stretch this out as much as we possibly can. Let's assume that Kohath was a newborn baby when he arrived in Egypt. Let's assume that Amram was born the year that his father died, and let's assume that Moses was born the year that his father died. So take 133 plus 137 plus 80, and that equals 350, which means that the amount of time the Israelites were in Egypt could have been no longer than 350 years maximum. Now, more than likely, Kohath was probably not a newborn baby when he arrived in Egypt. More than likely, Moses was not born the year that his father died, and more than likely, Amram was not born the year that his father died, which means that the amount of time the Israelites were in Egypt would have been significantly less than 350 years. So why does Exodus 12:40 say the Israelites were in Egypt for 430 years when this is not mathematically possible? The key is found in one of Paul's letters. In Galatians 3:16 and 17, Paul says, "Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. And this I say, that the law, which was 430 years later, cannot annul the covenant that was confirmed before by God in Christ." Basically, Paul is saying that from the time that Abraham received the promise to the time that Moses received the law, there was 430 years. Well, Abraham received the promise when he entered Canaan when he was 75 years old. Then, 25 years later, when Abraham was 100 years old, that's when Isaac was born. Then, 60 years later, when Isaac was 60 years old, that's when Jacob was born. Then, 130 years later, when Jacob was 130 years old, that's when all of Israel arrived in Egypt. So take 25 plus 60 plus 130, and that equals 215, which means that there was 215 years from the time that Abraham entered Canaan to the time that all of Israel arrived in Egypt. Now, Moses received the law at the same time that they left Egypt, because remember, the Israelites were living in Goshen, and then Moses led them out of Goshen, brought them through the wilderness, and brought them to the sea. And then God split the waters of the sea in half and brought them into Midian, which is in Arabia, then brought them to Mount Sinai, which is where Moses received the law. And so Moses received the law at the same time they left Egypt. So Paul is saying that there was 430 years from this point to this point, and according to the Old Testament, there's 215 years from this point to this point. So take 430 years and then subtract 215 years, and that equals 215, which means that the amount of time that the Israelites were in Egypt was 215 years. 215 in Egypt, 215 in Canaan, 430 total. Now that is mathematically possible, because 215 is significantly less than 350. And that's exactly what the Greek Septuagint says in Exodus 12:40. It says, "And the sojourning of the children of Israel while they sojourn in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan was 430 years."
So why do I bring these things up? When you look at the Greek Septuagint, y'all check this out. When you go to the Greek Septuagint's translation of Exodus 12 and 40, it says the entire sojourn of Israel in Canaan and in Egypt was 430 years. So this means from the time that Abraham got the promise made when he first went into Canaan until the point where his people, all of that 70, went into Egypt, that was 215 years. Now from the period that all of these patriarchs, now y'all stay with me, I know it's deep. The period that all of them were in Egypt unto the Exodus would have been the difference between 430 and it would have been the difference between the 430 and the 215, which is an additional 215 years. I know this is deep, but y'all stay with me. So the point is that the bondage that Israel went through had to be somewhere in the realm of 215 years where they were in actual bondage in Egypt. The other 215 was when Abraham received the promise, and then all the way up to when all of Israel went into Egypt. I know this is heavy. What is the point of all this? This is corroborated. This is the reason. This is corroborated by the Greek Septuagint, the Samaritan Pentateuch, Paul in Galatians 3:16, Josephus. Y'all check this out. So in Josephus, and let me open it up, make sure I got it right. In Josephus book 2, chapter 15, in section 2, it says they left Egypt in the month of Aviv on the Hebrew calendar on the 15th day of the lunar month, 430 years after our forefather Abraham came into Canaan, but 215 years only after Jacob was removed into Egypt. So it lets you know verbatim that this was 430 years from when Abraham first went into Canaan, not bondage. Why do we go through all of that, family? Let's go back to Genesis chapter 15. So in Genesis chapter 15 and verse 13, it says, and he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. They were not afflicted for the entirety of the 400 years, but the 430 years, which is exact, was from when Abraham first went into Canaan all the way through to the Exodus. And half of that time period was when all the patriarchs lived in Egypt. So it would have been about 215 years or less when they even were able to be oppressed, because we know when all of 60 of them got into Egypt, they were treated well until after Joseph died. So it would have been less than 215 years where after Joseph's death, they would have been oppressed by the Egyptians with hard rigor, hard bondage. They feared that Israel would be able to team up with their enemies because of what happened when we read in the book of Jasher, how when Zepho united the entire region to fight against Israel and Egypt, and they saw that Israel with only 50 of them was able to beat a couple thousand, right? So right then they said, we're gonna have to deal crafty with these people. So that would have been a period of less than 215 years where Egypt strategizes that we're gonna have to kill their man babies. We're gonna have to give them rigor and hard labor. We're gonna have to come up with plots to psych them out mentally and make them think like slaves, right? This would have been 215 years. So when you read, y'all check this out now. When you read in Genesis 15 that says that Abraham, your seed, are going to be strangers in a land for 400 years and are going to serve that nation for 400 years, this is not talking about that Egyptian captivity. So who is it talking about? Boom! The so-called Negro, so-called African American, the diaspora to the four corners of the earth is talking about us. Let's go! Because we served in America. We came in 1619 in Jamestown, and we served from that period unto in 2019 in August. That was the 400-year anniversary of us being slaves, or us being captives in the land of Babylon the Great, even the United States thereof. Let's go! So this, the power of God's word, y'all. This chapter shows that God's people would go through a captivity where they would go as swift as the eagle flies into slave cargo ships, into the land of captivity, sold as bond women and bond men with a yoke of iron around their neck. Y'all don't want to talk to me. This proves that Deuteronomy 28 had a prophetic layer that was not just dealing with the cycle of the statue of Daniel, but that last 10 toes will be us in America, y'all. All praises be to the Most High Yah. I got another thing for y'all too. I know this is a lot. I know it's heavy, y'all. Let's go to the book of Judges. And I'm going to show y'all something you probably ain't heard before. We're going to see. So in the book of Judges, chapter 5, we have Deborah and Barak singing this song after they received victory from their enemies. Verse 1, then sang Deborah and Barak, the son of Abinoam, on that day, saying, praise ye the Most High Yah, for the avenging of Israel, when the people willingly offered themselves. Hear, O you kings, give ear, O you princes. I, even I, will sing unto the Most High Yah. I will sing praise to the Lord God, the mighty one of Jacob, the mighty one of Israel. Lord, when thou wentest out of Seir, when thou marchest out of the field of Edom, the earth trembled. Oh my God. The heavens dropped. The clouds also dropped water. Y'all better talk to me. Now we have a problem. Houston, we got a problem. A lot of scholars say that, what is that verse talking about? Because we think that it's talking about when they came out of Mount Sinai and they had the law. Why did it say when they came out of Mount Seir? When the Lord avenged Israel? When they came, this is where y'all have to know who Seir is. Mount Seir is the region, the borders of Edom. This is the territory that Esau was given. It's the clefts of the rock we talked about. So what's going on? This is a future prophecy, because it's saying there will be a day when Israel will be avenged and that the Lord will deliver them out of Edom. Where do we see that ever happen in history? It has not happened yet. It is a future prophecy, because the captivities that we went through were the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Medes, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans. Never did we see our people be delivered from the Romans. We saw the temple be destroyed in AD 70 by Vespasian and Titus. This is when you got to know history. So after we were destroyed, or the temple was destroyed, and we were killed by the edge of the sword, Christ prophesied that we would be led away captive. So we're still in the land of Edom, and we have not been delivered since. What is the verse in Genesis 15 talking about then? That we will be in Edom, the 10 toes, the last ruling empire, the people that dwell in the clefts of the rock, the people that set their nest in the stars, the people that came to get us as swift as the eagle flies, that we would be in Edom, which is symbolized by Mount Seir, for 400 years, and then the Most High Yah would send Yeshua to recover the remnant of his people scattered to the four corners of the earth. The 4 archangels would come down and they would throw their sickles to the 4 corners and regather Zion, regather the so-called Negro, regather. Y'all don't want to talk to me, and that this has not happened yet. So the 400-year prophecy, which has just begun, y'all understand? And I know a lot of y'all are like, well, man, if the curse been lifted, JB, in 1619 to 2019, understand, when we started seeing COVID break through, when did that happen? Now, y'all got to think now. We saw COVID begin in the fall of 2019 in China. We didn't see COVID come until it hit the Americas the way it did until the beginning of 2020. So basically, right after 2019 is when all this hell started breaking through. Understand, is when all this coronavirus, the pandemic, people going crazy, the government shutdowns, and all this started right on time. And y'all don't get anxious. Understand that we're already living in the greatest time in human history. All praises be to the Most High Yah, the mighty one of Yaakov, the holy one of Yasharal. So we're witnessing, y'all check this out. We're witnessing the Most High Yah begin to lift the curse and judge these nations slowly but surely. We are getting ready to witness what Deborah sang about. Y'all better talk to me. When the Most High leads his people, when he marches them out of Edom. Let's read that again in verse 4. Lord, even the Most High Yah, when you wentest out of Seir, when thou marchest out of the field, that means the territory of Edom, the earth trembled, the heavens dropped, the clouds also dropped water. What's going on? Judgment. Nuclear devastation going on, World War III, and our people walking through the fire of the chaos with our heads held high, because our Mashiach has come to deliver us out of Babylon, to deliver us out of Edom. So y'all, with that, I don't get me started, start preaching, but just understand, the 400-year prophecy, we are living in that time period where we have fulfilled our end of the bargain. Yeshua already purchased the right to free us. Right now, we're just going through extra double for our trouble, because everything we go through right now is just adding to the recompense that's going to go in the head on all the nations. That's some deep stuff, y'all. So y'all be encouraged, Zion. We are the chosen people. The Most High is lifting the curse with every person that you tell they're Israel. Every person that wakes up to who we are getting one step closer to returning back to that land, returning back to Canaan, the land that the Most High gave to Abraham, that he gave to Isaac, that he gave to Jacob, and gave to his 12 sons, the 12 tribes of Israel, and that's us, y'all. So all praises be to the Most High, y'all. Peace, love, blessings, and black power to the chosen race of the Most High. I love y'all with the love of the Messiah. Be blessed. Shalom. All praises.